Hi designers! Today you're going to be combining all the skills that you've learned creating masks, working with layers, and using the brush tool to colorize this black and white photo of the famous artist Pablo Picasso. You might be familiar with Pablo Picasso. He is one of the most famous artists. He was the greatest artist of the 20th century, a lot of people would say, and this is a photo of him. So let's bring him to color, shall we? The first thing you're going to do is open the file, the JPEG, and then you're going to duplicate the layer. You're going to duplicate the layer for every part of this photograph. So we're going to duplicate the hat, we're going to duplicate the face. You can see I'm just control clicking on the layer and bringing up the menu to duplicate the layer. And then as I'm duplicating the layer, I'm renaming each layer. Because these layers are all identical, I need to know which part I'm working on. Right here, I can't quite get my layers panel open, so I have to actually pop it off of the other panels and bring it up. And I put the background in the back, and so you can see I have 7 different layers there. Keep your background layer locked. That way you can always have a copy to go back to if you need to. So you're going to be creating a mask for each part of this photograph that you're going to be colorizing. And you can see here right at first I try to use the brush tool like you did for your dolly selection exercise. But it's a little bit difficult just because it's hard to draw with the mouse. You can see the mask over there that I created. But I decided to go back and use the quick selection tool. And that's the tool that I would recommend. Once you have your area selected, you click the Quick Selection Mask button, not the Quick Selection Mask, the Mask button to create the mask, and it will create a mask or a stencil around everything that you've selected. So here I'm selecting the face, using my Quick Selection tool to refine that selection. Then I click the mask button and it creates a mask around the face. You'll see in just a moment this is going to be really important so that we can just colorize that area. We have a stencil around that area and the color will only be applied to that area. You'll also see that the importance of masks over using selections in that you can refine the mask as you're working if you need to add a little bit of area or change it at all. Here with the mouth, I selected the mouth, but the mouth doesn't have hard edges. So I decided to use the Quick Mask tool and use a Gaussian blur. Slide that down just so it's a few pixels, just so that it fades out from the lips to the skin. Then create the mask. And what I'm doing here when I'm previewing my masks and my layers is I'm using this background image, the one that's locked, so that I can see the full picture of Pablo Picasso. But then I'm clicking on and off the visibility of that so that I can see what exactly it is I created, and that's where you see just the part of the lips or just the part of the eyes. We just have 2 parts left here, the scarf and the shirt. I'm not really sure if that's a shirt or if it's another scarf, but we'll call it the shirt. So there you can see all my layers built together, and then I do have a background layer that just kind of fills in some of those extra pixels. Now you're going to use the brush tool and select different colors, and this is where you can use the blend modes that are actually one of the options in the brush tool. You can see that up at the top. You do have to change the image mode, go up to the menu bar at the top and change the mode to RGB color if it's in grayscale. And now I'm going to go back to the brush tool and use those options, the blend modes up there. And really it's up to you. You can see I'm trying out different ones, trying to see which one looks best. Color burn really doesn't do a whole lot. Let's see if linear burn. Linear burn looks okay. you want to retain the texture that's there. That's the reason that we don't just use the normal mode. The normal mode would just flatten the color. It would just be that shape. So I think linear burn looks the best there. You can even zoom in, make your brush really small and get those threads, get the details. You can see I can't quite get it unless I zoom in, so I'm going to use the zoom tool to do that, and then it's very easy to control. Next I'm going to color the scarf, and I just follow the same procedure. Select a little bit darker color and use linear burn again. And because I'm using a mask, I don't have to be careful about what I color because I've already got it stenciled. And here's where you see where you can go back and refine your mask. I decided that the edges on the scarf are a little bit too sharp. So I clicked on the mask, I went up to filter and I selected Gaussian blur, and then I blurred out the edges a little bit, and it makes it look a little bit more realistic. Now I'm using the brush tool to refine the mask even more on that area so that the red is not covering up his face. I'm adding black areas to the mask to create more of a stencil, and then I'm using white areas of the mask to bring the scarf back in. You can see right here it's not working for me. It's because my mode of my brush tool is set to linear burn, which won't work on your mask. You have to set it to normal so that you're normally filling in the white. Just touching up those edges a little bit. Moving on to the lips. However, you might want to do the face first because the lip color is going to be dependent on the face color, unless you want to give Pablo Picasso some lipstick, which I'm not quite sure if he ever wore lipstick. You can see there what happens when you have it in normal mode. It just covers up the other pixels. And here I am trying again the different modes, just seeing which one looks the most realistic. You can see darker color doesn't look good at all. Hue doesn't do anything. And in this case, the color mode does the most. And you might have to try out several different skin colors. We want something that looks realistic. It's not quite going to be realistic because skin has all kinds of different colors in it, where this is all just going to be one color, but we want something that at least looks human. Now you can go back to the lips, and I just created a little bit pinker version of that skin color. And here I decided to go a little bit darker. Men's lips are difficult because they don't have a lot of color in them. Men don't typically wear lipstick. So I'm just going to leave it like that. Just slightly pink, just a little bit of color. I'm pretty sure Pablo Picasso had brown eyes, but for the sake of this project, I'm going to create blue eyes on him. I'm using my brush tool here to restore the color, the black color in his pupils, because we know that the pupils in the eyes are not colored. So that looks more realistic. I'm going to use the same thing for his hat. Now we haven't talked about color schemes yet, so it's completely up to you what type of color scheme you use. I'm using a complementary color scheme of red and green, and we'll talk about what that means more later. And you can see here on the mask of the hat, I have this tiny area where there's too much mask, there's too much being stenciled out there. So I need to go back and add actually some black to that area to mask off that part of the hat. And when I do that, it actually goes through to the face layer. And so I need to also adjust the mask there. You can see I painted in with the wrong color. It's going to take me a couple tries here to figure out what's going on. And that's the best skill that you can develop, honestly, as you learn Photoshop, is just, if you do something wrong, just try it out. Don't get stuck. Don't get frozen. Just try to figure out what's going on. You can see I'm checking the different layers, trying to see if I'm working on the wrong layer. And then I finally go back and figure it out. I colorize the right area and adjust that mask. Then I work with the background a little bit here. I try a couple of different things. I try orange in the background It's really up to you. You could even add patterns or use a different brush in the background to create a texture. You want to be careful in this background layer not to go over the shoulders of his coat. You could create another layer for the coat and change the color of the coat if you want a little bit extra of a challenge. So I settled on blue for that darker part of the background, and then a really dull red just to coordinate with his scarf. And that's pretty much it. We have a colorized version of Pablo Picasso. It kind of looks like those old movies that are colorized, so I used my type tool here just to add a layer there that explains that this is Picasso in Technicolor. That's the old term for those colorized black and white movies. Making sure my type layer is on top. And as always, make sure you name it as your last name, first name, and this is Picasso Colorization.